Tonight, experts say weapons seized in Tumbler Ridge were legal. The United Way makes a large donation. And Dawson Creek Council hears about the dangers of fracking. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with the guns in a photo posted by the mother of the Tumbler Ridge shooter all appear to have been legal. That according to a former RCMP weapons officer. Frank Grospeach says they all appear to have been legal when the picture was shared in August of 2024. However, Grospeach does add that the picture includes a Chris Vector semi-automatic rifle that became illegal to own just 4 months later. It's not clear if any of the 8 guns in the photo were used by Jesse Van Roostelaar. Grospeach says there are 5 rifles, 2 shotguns, and a handgun in the photo that was shared. And another big donation to support the community of Tumbler Ridge to tell you about tonight. The United Way is committing $100,000 to the community as it navigates the recovery process of the mass murder last week. Now, the organization says the funding will help local groups care for their friends and neighbors after the immediate response ends. Michael McKnight, the United Way's BC president, says, "The tragic events remind us how deeply communities rely on one another in times of crisis. The funding is part of hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations that have been generated for the community or directly for families who were hurt or lost loved ones." Rare cancers in Northeast BC are increasing at an alarming rate due to fracking. That according to a Dawson Creek family doctor and researchers from UBC and the University of Ontario. They met with Dawson Creek City Council to present their findings. They discussed the potential harms of oil and gas activity here in Northeast BC. Dr. Ulrich Meyer claims exposure to contaminants from nearby fracking is to blame for increase in rare cancers, and she says a number of doctors have left Dawson Creek due to concerns about the impact of living so close to fracking activity as one reason for their departure. The researchers say fracking fluids contain large amounts of pollutants. Where there are leaks, many of the chemicals contain toxicity in human cells. Over a 2-month period in 2023, 25 lung biopsies were performed in Dawson Creek. 23 of those came back positive for cancer. The normal rate is 15 for a whole year. Well, the spread of measles in Northeast BC continues to slow. There were 7 new cases announced in BC by the Centre for Disease Control. Of those, only 1 case reported here in the Northeast. And that brings the provincial total to 427 since the start of 2025. Of that, however, 75% of those cases have been from right here in the Northeast. Well, the NDP government was once again pummeled over the budget, including health care, about cuts affecting seniors during question period in the legislature. 7 previously approved long-term care projects, including in Fort St. John, are being indefinitely paused. It comes at a time when, according to the Seniors Advocate, the number of people waiting for long-term beds has gone up by 200% compared to just 10 years ago.
This government's choice to indefinitely delay 6 long-term care projects is a slap in the face to BC seniors.
Day says other provinces have found ways to construct long-term care beds at 1/3 of the cost that's seen here in BC. BC's health minister says government continues to work on long-term care by building homes through standardized designs to help bring down costs. And families who have children with autism deemed to have low needs are calling on the NDP government to rethink a planned overhaul of the support system. 11-year-old Adam Williams and his family anticipate that they will see individualized funding cut in half under the new proposal. The Coquitlam boy is one of roughly 10,000 children across British Columbia, expected to have that money reduced or eliminated under the new government plan. The Williams family has 2 children with autism. The changes will mean annual funding of $6,000 per child will now drop to $3,000.
Oh, my blood started boiling. It really did. I was in tears because I was like, all this work that I'm doing right now for my children, I'm constantly advocating for them. With that funding, we could get certain amount of sessions in a year. That would become half the amount.
There were overwhelming calls for us to design a system that increased direct funding to more children that ensured that funding and supports were assigned based on need and not a singular diagnosis.
The government says its new approach will give more money to those who need it most. The province adds it'll be spending an additional $475 million over 3 years, with greater supports for high-needs children. Drug deaths in British Columbia dropped last year to under 2,000 for the first time since 2020. The BC Coroner Service says 1,826 people died from illicit drug overdoses. 77% of those deaths were male. The figures from last year are a 21% drop from the year before. However, the Coroner Service says it still represents a profound loss of life. The powerful opioid fentanyl was found in 69% of those who were tested. Well, as supporters of Alberta's separatism try to get their question on a future ballot, Premier Daniel Smith has announced a referendum on a number of other hot-button issues.
I want you to know how confident I am in the judgment of Albertans on these and other delicate issues. Although there are some politicians and commentators that fear direct democracy, such as referendums, I do not. I trust the judgment of Albertans.
9 questions will be asked in the planned referendum. They include whether to cut off newcomers from social services if they do not fall under Alberta's approved immigration status. The question doesn't define what that means. Others ask whether Alberta should open negotiations with the rest of Canada to abolish the Senate and to give provinces the power to appoint Superior Court judges. Alberta's opposition NDP says Premier Smith is using immigration as a political distraction ahead of delivering a budget with a multi-billion-dollar deficit. Smith blamed the projected budget deficits on falling oil prices and what she calls out-of-control immigration. The Canada Revenue Service Agency says people should have an easier time filing their taxes this year. The agency revamped its operations as part of a government-ordered service improvement plan focused on addressing call center delays. The CRA says it has streamlined its website and hired more call center workers. The 2025 tax filing system begins on Monday and ends on April the 30th for most Canadian taxpayers. The NDP's 5 leadership hopefuls took to the stage in Vancouver last night for a high-stakes debate, each making the case on why they should lead the party. And tariffs and Donald Trump came up a lot.
We need a Canadian shield to Trump-proof our economy.
The way that we need to push back on that is to build our own economic sovereignty.
That's how we fight Donald Trump, is by creating economic security in this country.
The tariffs are an incredible opportunity for us to reconsider what our economy is for.
Our retaliation strategy is investing in ourselves and seeing the huge worth that we are as a country within our own borders.
NDP insiders say the campaign has been too close to call. There's just 5 weeks to go before the winner will be named. There's new concern in Ottawa. The Canadian-US-Mexico trade agreement could be in trouble, but Canada's finance minister's trying to remain optimistic.
We'll continue to make the point and keep telling them that we're ready at the table whenever the parties want to review CUSMA.
The New York Times is reporting that 2 Canadian officials involved in trade discussions say expectations of a full renewal of the deal are low. U.S. President Donald Trump has said Canada is ripping off his country. Trump has reportedly said that he could walk away from CUSMA. This comes as Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc wraps up a trade mission to Mexico, saying there is no division between our 2 countries. The trade deal is meant to be reviewed this July. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's so-called EPA or fentanyl tariffs. While steel, aluminum, and automotive parts, along with lumber tariffs, will remain in place, the ruling is a major blow to Trump's economic agenda. Abigail Beeman has the details.
I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed.
The American president says he's deeply disappointed in the U.S. Supreme Court decision striking down so-called IEPA or fentanyl tariffs. He then, as many predicted, announced new ones.
Today I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country.
President Trump has famously said his favorite word is tariff. And so I don't think they're going to simply walk away.
IEPA tariffs collected an estimated $240 billion. The Supreme Court decision did not address refunds, while one dissenting opinion noted handling them would be a mess.
Unraveling that and securing refunds is going to be messy, but that's certainly going to be a key issue that Canadian businesses are going to be focused on.
While steel and aluminum, automotive and lumber tariffs remain in place. Yet the vast majority of Canadian goods were exempt from IEPA tariffs anyway due to CUSMA, the free trade deal that's up for review.
With these midterms, with a shifting political climate in the United States, with the inability of Congress to just follow him at a command, all of those things add up to a situation where I think it is more likely that he's actually going to engage on CUSMA than attempt to burn it to the ground.
The lead minister on the Canada-US file said in a statement the court decision reinforces Canada's position that IEPA tariffs are unjustified, but, quote, critical work lies ahead to fight for businesses still impacted by tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Ottawa.
And Ottawa has updated its travel advice for First Nations people headed to the United States. The government website updated yesterday with new guidelines. Ottawa is urging First Nations people to carry a passport in addition to a status card when crossing the border. Before this week, the government's website said First Nations people could freely enter the United States for the purposes of employment, study, retirement, investing, or immigration. The website now says acceptance of all status cards is, quote, entirely at the discretion of U.S. officials. The Assembly of First Nations has been warning First Nations people to be wary in light of immigration enforcement raids in recent months. The last flights operated by Canadian Airlines have left Cuba. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says Canadian Airlines have brought nearly 28,000 travelers safely back to Canada. She says some international airlines are still offering commercial flights for anyone who is still stuck. These are the dim nighttime scenes in Havana. Canadians are being urged to avoid all non-essential travel to the country as the crisis over shortages of many essentials, from food to electricity, worsened during the U.S.-imposed oil blockade. Well, UFO enthusiasts are over the moon with the U.S. president. Donald Trump has ordered the Pentagon and other government agencies to release files related to UFOs and extraterrestrial life. It comes after former U.S. President Barack Obama weighed in on the subject of aliens. Here's John Venevali-Rao.
My gosh. American Navy pilots have spotted them. Look at that thing. Strange objects flying in unusual ways. But now the U.S. president vowing to release whatever his government knows about UFOs and aliens. But is Donald Trump a believer?
I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it.
Trump directing America's Department of War and other agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life. That includes UFOs, which these days are called unidentified aerial phenomena.
A lot of UFO fans are really excited that this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. This is Christmas. We're going to be getting all the files.
There's some. It all comes after former U.S. President Barack Obama appeared on a podcast and offered a surprising answer to this question.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51.
His statement that they're real led to so much buzz online, Obama later clarified, writing, statistically, the universe is so vast that the odds are good there's life out there. Adding, I saw no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us, really. Still, Trump accused Obama of revealing classified information. In 2024, the U.S. Pentagon said there was no evidence alien life had ever been encountered, but added there were sightings that needed further investigation. Still, of Trump's latest directive, some think he's just using it to deflect attention.
Some people had said already that this was going to be a distraction from some other files that he doesn't want to release. So maybe we'll get something, but I'm not holding my breath quite yet.
Meanwhile, Trump did not set any kind of a deadline for the release of information. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
All right, please do stay tuned. I'll be right back after the break with a look at your weekend weather. Stay tuned.